Thanks so much for joining us again on another Marketing Hero video. I'm here today with Soso Sazesh. Is that correct?
Yep.
Soso Sazesh.
Nailed it. That's a rare. People don't usually get on the first try.
Yeah, it's not a common name, and you don't have like a common background as well. You've worked with a lot of great companies with SEM, so search engine marketing. That's your forte, and that's the forte of Growth Pilots, your company. So one thing that I wanted to know about SEM and about you, how you work with these amazing brands, amazing companies, is what types of businesses, you've worked with a lot of them, what types of businesses take the most from SEM? SEM.
What type of business get the most from it?
Yeah.
So, it's a really good question. It really depends on the business model of these companies. What you find is that there's some businesses that are very conducive to paid advertising. E-commerce being a no-brainer, right? Because you can measure the ROI very quickly, right? You can put X number of dollars in and get Y number of dollars out and measure it in very quick feedback. So that's what I would say is. That's kind of like the quintessential ingredients to paid advertising is any time that you can measure what you're getting back from the dollars spent in a short feedback loop.
And how short is the feedback loop?
That ranges a lot too. So for e-commerce, it's nearly instant. But think about like B2B SaaS companies. We work with a lot of those companies, and the feedback loop to getting a customer is longer, but there's a pretty clear expected value that you can place on a lead, which happens right away. So while it might take, let's say, 4 weeks, 6 months for a lead to convert to a customer, once you have enough data, you can determine the quality of what your leads are up front, and so that lead usually happens right away after the ad click, and so you can optimize towards something higher up in the funnel, which is the lead in this case. So that's another kind of common business type that you see doing really well with paid advertising. Something where there's kind of like a lead generation model where there's a known value of what those leads are.
Great. So you have to have in your mind your persona. So the entire strategy has to be in place so you can take advantage from SEM.
Oh,
is that correct?
For sure. Yeah, and I didn't even talk about that. Yeah, I was just talking about like the business types. But in order to succeed with SEM, I mean, you need to know like what are your customers searching for? How do your customers find you? And the nice thing about Google AdWords is that you can determine that early on just using the platform itself. So you might not know that going into it, but you might experiment and you might see, oh wow, this is somebody searched for this and they ended up converting, and so you find a really cool source of customers or a promising source of customers. So yes, you should know in general who you're targeting, but Google can help you figure that out in the early days as well.
That's great, especially for startups.
For sure.
Yeah. Another question is how do I approach SEM? Do I search for someone that is doing that for a long time, or should I do it in-house? What do you recommend?
So this is usually a function of the stage of a company. So I don't want to plug my company too much, but just why I started the company was I was finding that companies at the very early stages, they were trying to make it work in-house, and they were usually failing because they don't have the time or expertise to do it right. And so that wouldn't work. Then they'd try to work. Then they would go external and try to work with an agency. And the agency model is not very well suited for early stage companies who need to move fast, break things, learn very quickly. Agencies are well suited for companies with large budgets who don't really want to rock the boat too much.
Have things figured out.
Exactly. And so I saw this really interesting opportunity there to kind of come in and kind of act as a consultant for these companies. So the short answer is, when you're at the earliest stages, if you have somebody smart who has the time to figure this stuff out and manage it in-house, it can make a lot of sense. Or if you can work with a really kind of hands-on external, usually a consultant. An agency is usually the wrong approach for companies at the earlier stages. And then as your marketing spend grows, you'll find that your needs increase. And this is a business decision at the end of the day. I mean, I'm biased, obviously. I run a paid advertising agency, so there are a lot of benefits to working with an agency as you scale. And where we've tried to differentiate ourselves is we try to sit between what you find with an in-house marketing team and what you get from an agency, because we see that there's benefits to both of those. But it's a business decision at the end of the day how to approach it.
And how about budget? So how much to start testing, and how much does it make sense to start testing? And of course, the limits will go up to how many customers you want. So
this is so funny because like when we're bringing companies on, like the number one thing that I always hear is like, oh, if we can hit our target, there's no limit. We'll spend $10 million a month, and it's like, of course you will if your economics are positive. Naturally, you're going to continue spending. Now, doing that is a different story, right? And that's why we exist in the first place. If you're first starting with the channel, I mean, again, there's no hard and fast number that's like you should spend this much. I tend to find that like if you spend $10,000 in a month, you'll learn a lot about the channel and kind of what the viability is, what's converting.
But that also depends on the industry, right?
Exactly. I mean, there's some companies that can't even spend $10,000 a month, right? And the amount of search volume that's available is based on the market that you're operating in. And if you're in one of these nascent new markets that people aren't looking for, you don't have the option to spend money, right? But if you're in one of these super competitive markets where there's a lot of search volume, then maybe you need to spend more than $10,000 even. So you're right, the context matters a lot of like the industry that you're operating in.
Yeah, and one question that I think our audience will be thinking right now, because we have a lot of people interested in content marketing, content strategy. How does the content strategy talks and contributes to the SEM strategy and vice versa?
For sure. So content plays actually a very large role. So one, just general like social proof. If you're clicking through to an ad to a company that you've read their content, you've heard of their content, they're already kind of top of mind. So think about it this way. If you're in that scenario, you're probably more likely to click on the ad from the company that you've heard of or you've seen their content from. So click-through rates will probably be higher. That means quality scores within Google will be higher. Your cost per click will be lower. So you can end up seeing better efficiencies from that like brand recognition. We've also done some things where we actually drive people who are clicking on ads to content pieces that convert really well. Because
using ads to work on the distribution of content pieces.
Exactly, okay. And this is kind of twofold. So one might be just to get the word out about a content piece. Like we want to push this content piece out, and maybe there's a lead capture form on the content piece. Yeah. Maybe that works well. But what we've also found is sometimes a content piece will convert better for a customer than their landing page will, like the direct response landing page. And so in that case, then we should be funneling traffic to the content piece versus the landing page. So it's That's great. And I also heard you talking about the importance of YouTube for content distribution. How is that working, and why YouTube ads is so important right now? It gets, even for some cases and for some strategies, it gets cheaper than Facebook ads right now. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean the cost per view on YouTube ads is far lower than Facebook ads. And I think that's from a couple of things. So one, the thing to keep in mind about YouTube is this person is on a YouTube property. You're kind of disrupting their flow. This is someone who's watching videos and they're on YouTube. So there's kind of pros and cons. The pros, it's cheap to kind of get that distribution. The con is getting somebody to leave YouTube to take an action is very challenging. So the click-through rate from somebody to watch a video to click through to your website is it's tiny. Whereas Facebook, you pay more for the cost per view, but the click-through rate is much higher. So again, it's kind of, there's pros and cons there. But in general, I mean, again, if you're going kind of after exposure and you have a content piece that you want to get out there that's in video format, YouTube's a great channel for that.
Yeah, and talking about channels, we also have the GDN, so Google Display Network. It's also important for content to use that channel sometimes. How do you approach that? Because it also has pros and cons. Sometimes the quality is not that right.
Absolutely. And the Google Display Network, the traffic quality is kind of notorious for not converting very well. And so I think the best approach there is you need to really know who your customer is and align the targeting. I mean, I mentioned all the different kinds of targeting that you have available on the Google Display Network. And first of all, you need to line the targeting up with who your target customer is. But when it comes to content, we've done things like push white papers, and you can run an ad, right? Like for a webinar or for a content piece and drive people to that. Distributing actual content, I can't say that we've ever done that, like using an ad unit to like push the content itself, because the ad unit's pretty small and you can't really engage with the content. But yeah, it's kind of a fascinating. I wonder if that might work. But in general, you're trying to generate awareness on the display network typically. So that's more for brand building. But if you have something that really resonates with your audience and you have the targeting dialed in, you can get some of that direct response carryover.
Cool. So thank you so much, Soso, and this is Soso Sazesh from Growth Pilot. You can go directly to growthpilot.com to learn more. Go to contenttools.com/blog to learn more also about SEM, and we'll see you on the next Content Heroes program.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.